using the moon, and the scientists say that if you use the moon to tell a year, it kind of goes over 12 months, almost 13. So it's it's something that we were used to, and it didn't bother us whether it was 12 months or 13 months. But the thing about giving names of the month by the name of the moon is different villages have different names for the name of the moon. I was kind of surprised to hear that, and so I thought we all used the same terminology, but it didn't come out that way. So, well, I think we should start with today to start with uh, uh, question and answers. And if you have questions, if you want to put it on chat or if you just want to speak up, just unmute yourself and we'll work on that. So if you have any questions or comments at this time, this is
this is Anna Kua. I have a random question. How did the community take to divorce back in the day? Was that acceptable? Was it frowned on?
Divorce was a new idea, and I'm not sure that I heard any. I've heard any comments, but if did you hear any comments or?
No, I didn't. I just wondered because I recall my grandmother saying that she waited until her last parent passed away, and then that next day she filed for divorce. So I was just wondering.
Yeah,
it's not funny, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so I just wondered if that was something that was frowned on, and maybe that's why she waited.
I know that sometimes the issue of adultery came up, and
Okay.
I saw a picture in the history book once. When they bring the woman back and she's caught in adultery, they cut off the tip of her nose, and there was
Oh my goodness.
I know. I saw actually a picture of a woman that had a very gnarled looking nose.
Mm-hmm.
And it said that her nose was clipped
Oh my.
because of adultery. So that's all I ever heard of happening because uh, they were able to have uh, two wives if they wanted or if they could afford it.
Mm-hmm.
They could have more than one wife. So the women said, okay, then I'll do it two husbands.
Mm-hmm.
So they got, so that was common, but I never heard of more than that. So
Mm.
there was a couple in Huna that where she ran off with the younger husband.
Mm-hmm.
But I never did hear if there was a divorce or not. By that time, the missionaries
Mm.
were around and really looking down on stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I just was wondering. So
I'm gonna check into that.
Okay.
Because I didn't know the answer, but to see. Uh, Sometimes the couples would just live together without arrangement.
Hmm.
And so my sister-in-law, I was home, visiting home, and I saw this couple together, and I said, "Oh, did those two get married?" She looked out the window and she said,
Mhm.
"No," she said, "they just borrowed each other." That's what she, I, I, I thought, hey, that's really a good term, you know. So they just borrow each other. But yeah, that's a good question because now I'm gonna uh, ask some. It probably had more to do uh, with missionaries
Okay.
than it did with the clients in the different groups.
And
So does someone
in your
else?
experience, oh, pardon me.
Yeah, go ahead.
In your experience, did you ever see a long time ago where the woman was considerably older than the man and they were married?
Yeah, yeah,
And
I saw
what
that.
is that? What can you tell me about that? Because there's some, I was doing family tree and I saw that situation. And in the documents, it said those ages are true and verified. And I just thought that was the wife was a relative of mine was like 30 years older than the man or 30 years older. And I was just wondering what do you know about that or additional
Yeah,
comments about that?
from what I
Or was it
understand.
frowned on? Was it accepted?
Yeah, it no, it wasn't a problem as the as the Clinkets go. Uh, and it was done for a very specific reason. The woman, when she marries, even though she is a clan leader of her family, she is taken from her home to live with her husband in his house. So if she's an eagle and he's a raven, they went to live in his house, the ravens. And so she she would raise her children uh, in that house. And sometimes the woman is looked on as very, very valuable. And
Okay.
if her husband dies and she is left, she has children to raise, and also she turns out to be a real value to the tribe, to the clan.
Okay.
They put uh, someone with her to take care, kind of like to take care of her. And
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
yeah, so my dad, I think, had to go through that where he finished boarding school. And I found him uh, in the 1900 census.
Okay.
He was a student at Sheldon Jackson. At that time, it was Sitka Native School. And
Okay.
10 years later, there was another census, and he was listed as a 25-year-old. So in 10 years, my dad aged 5. Uh, but he was married to an older woman that had two. She was raising two grandchildren,
Oh,
girls.
interesting.
And when she died, these two girls became my dad's daughters.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
knew one of them as my sister,
Hmm.
even though she was almost as old as my mother by the time my dad finally
Hmm.
got married again. So I know
Hmm.
the system is. still works because uh, at that time it still worked, and that they were uh, if it was not possible to replace the husband because there wasn't either there wasn't anybody or uh, they couldn't find anybody to save the woman, then it was expected for her clan to come and get her, take her back to the village. And that's where the shame pole came in regards to wrangle, is that three women and they couldn't find spouses for them. So they asked the clan to take them back, but it never happened. So because we sued each other for years, we suing each other is not a new thing to the Clinkets because that's what we did. So they sued that clan uh, monetary or some to pay back some way, but they didn't do it. So that's so they made a shame poll because the opposite clan had to take care of their women, feed them, take care of them, house them.
Last month, they just acknowledged that it has been paid back, and they took it down at the Kui for Hinky Hoyt.
That they could have, in order to take down the shame pole, if they wanted to get rid of it, to just come and pay the debt. Then the pole would have to be taken down. But if the pole still exists, it's because they never paid the debt.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, gonna chish.
Uh, but the term where it involves state paperwork, such as a divorce, probably by that time they had to have paperwork for being married. So then they said, the missionaries said, you can't have more than one wife or you can't have more than one husband. But as I grew up, I knew some families that they still did it. So, are there any other questions or comments? That was a good one. Thank you. Cheese.
Ah, okay, if somebody doesn't have another question, then I have a question. Last time you were speaking about how the young girls were out of school for a period of time, was that a coming of age or was that as far as them about to get married? Was it, why were they out of school so long and how long were they? And what was that about?
Well, they no longer could do it after school started, but the girls, when they began to have their administration, were kind of put away for a whole year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes the women were really, really strict about that 1 year. And my husband was talking to me about that. If you followed the moon, and the people were able to keep track of of time with the different shapes of the moon, different things that happened. So it was something that that was used very specifically, not only for navigating but also for telling time. So that's the way that the women kept track of how long the girl should be kept away
And
from.
what was I kind of got confused. What's the significance of having her out a year? And is she like in training to be a
Yeah,
wife or?
she's in training to be a wife and mother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also it's kind of interesting. I think it gives her time to mature. The 1 year, I would say, because I mentioned before that the girls matured quite later than
Hmm.
than today, because we have girls nowadays that are 13 that mature,
Oh, okay.
and that wouldn't work. At that time, the girls were 14, 15 at that time, and that they were put away. And it could be longer than a year, just depending on the parents. I don't know if it's because they can't find a husband or if it just they felt that she wasn't prepared enough. But that's a time when being by herself, she could study study things, weaving and sewing and uh, different things like that. But she had no contact with anybody except the women during that
So
time.
did she sleep and stay in a different place
They
if she
used
had no
to
contact?
they used to go and build a little shed for her to stay, which is really, uh, I would say, really difficult, just because of such a rainy area. Uh, and in my book that I wrote, uh, I had the mother, or not her, she wasn't her real mother. Her aunt had severe arthritis, so she couldn't take care of her in the shed. So she just fixed a room in where she was living to have the girl nearby. So it could be done that way too. It could be actually be a regular building, or most of the time is a makeshift something.
And did the girls mind that? Did they look forward to it? Did they think it was a burden? Were they
Uh,
lonely?
and it was something that they expected. It was something I heard uh, about all the time when my parents were teaching us. And I fully expected to be placed with in a marriage, but apparently my mother didn't like it, so I never was. But I think, come to think of it, I might have gone ahead with an arrangement like that to marry somebody you don't know, or somebody uh, you don't love. I mean, it's not a love arrangement. It's a political arrangement.
Okay. Okay, thank you for all that information. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. There is some studies that were done. I think Shotridge, when he was working in Pennsylvania, his
Lewis?
wife wrote a small booklet on this type of arrangement for the women. And then in Canada, the crickets who are in Canada, and they wrote books. There was three of them. It was called The Three Women, and it was kind of a sad narrative because they fully expected to go through that process, and they felt denied
Hmm.
uh, because it was never done because of school and missionaries.
Mhm.
By that time, the missionaries really put the pressure on the parents. And another thing I think that really affected all of this process is, and it affected the boys in a different way, uh, is epidemics, the sickness that came
Oh.
and might have maybe the mother or the grandmother who was going to be responsible for the girl uh, would be gone. So that process is not followed. And for the boys, their uncles would not be able to take them and train them. So uh, when the war started, the the boys joined the service, and it was a joke that the boys no longer had uncles to take care of them and train them. Instead, they got a new uncle, Uncle Sam. So uh, they tried to be funny, but it was kind of sad because then the boys were not cared for and
Mhm.
trained, like, because that would be a training session for him
Mhm.
to be a father and be take care of his family and things like that by
Mm.
making sure that he knows how to collect food and also a way to earn money. Not,
Mhm.
they didn't earn money. That was something when there was a big depression, everybody was crying because they didn't have money to buy food. We didn't even know there was a depression because we collected all our food, and it didn't bother us at all because we had all the food we needed. If there wasn't any money, it didn't matter because we hardly ever had it anyway.
Mhm.
So yeah, yeah, it's yeah, there is a big gap uh, that was done away with in regards to the bringing up of children and the things that are supposed to happen.
It seems like that would be quite impactful for the society during that time, our people, when it's supposed to be a time of learning, and then they just did away with it for different reasons,
Yeah, yeah, they
hal- halting our growth.
yeah, the girls can study how to weave, how to sew, how uh, and food. They were kind of strict on some foods, and my mom tried to be strict with me, even though I wasn't put away for the year like it was in the old time. But certain foods, uh, don't eat eggs because then all you'll have is twins. And it wasn't that they didn't like twins, but twins have the tendency to be born too early and they can't survive. So it's kind of a sad problem that they couldn't solve. So don't eat eggs. and don't eat seaweed because that money will slide right out of your hands. Those were taboo. And there's a way to get around it. It's like up you have a black cat that crosses your path, and the superstition is you turn in a circle. I'm making this up. You turn in a circle and spit in the wind or something to break that bad luck. And they they tried to kind of like that. I'm just using that as an example that there is a solution. So if I want to eat seaweed, especially seaweed with salmon eggs, real favorite is to invite somebody from the opposite clan. And there was this couple that used to come to our place. So I had to take a spoonful of the seaweed and the salmon eggs and serve it, put it in the woman's mouth to eat the first spoonful. So that takes away the superstition.
That's
You can,
interesting.
you can take care of some of those things like that. So
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing all that.
I know there's a lot of little things like that are just kind of funny. So it's as far as superstitions go, I I don't have the fear of a black cat crossing my path. It's a white man's superstition. Or breaking a mirror, I think it's the worst superstition that the white man could think of. 10 years bad luck. Boy, that's real punishment. Walk under a ladder, those kind of things. So I don't have any fear about those. If I break a mirror, I said, oh, just get another one. So, but anyway, are there any other comments or questions? So bringing up some of these thoughts, it's very good because it seems to be a puzzle. I'm pretty sure it was still a puzzle to the girls that had to go through it, but it was like I say, it was expected. So it kind of takes the pain out of going through that. The fact that they knew possibly that they might be put with an older man. So they don't know. They didn't have a choice. So the one thing that I wanted to talk about, and it was kind of something I wanted to make sure that we're talking about the right thing or the same thing. We during the potlatch that we're planning, somebody wanted to receive a name of the Kagwantan, I think it was. Do we have that person? Not today, maybe.
Did she say
But
it was Felina?
I don't
I
remember.
thought she said
who
it was
oh, it's Lena. Yeah, that sounds familiar. That she wanted a name. Anyway,
I also don't have a name, and I'd like to receive a name.
okay. And who
It-
are you?
It's Carrie Holyfield.
Oh,
My mother's African American. My father's Duckton, and I'm the grandchild of the Kagwantan.
yeah. Oh, the names. See, that the reason I'm bringing up this subject is somewhere in my head, I suddenly realized that somebody called it an adoption. So I wanted to clarify because adoption and naming are two different things. So I want to make sure we're doing the right ones. I'm pretty sure that the individual wanted to receive a name, but then the word came up that it was an adoption, and it's not. It's a naming. A naming ceremony is really different. So the naming or the adoption, I guess I should cover that first, is it was done in various ways uh, in the olden days. Sometimes, like there are two sisters that marry, and one of them, after being married, has a lot of babies, and the other sister has none. Even though she's married, she doesn't get pregnant and have a baby. So the sister can take one of a brand new born baby and give it to her sister for good. That was an adoption. And it wasn't a public, like the chiefs and everybody had to be involved, but it was just a gift from family gift to uh, to a family member, and that was accepted. Another type of adoption is the child could do the adoption, and that happened in my family. They choose a family that they're attracted to and feel comfortable in, and they keep coming there and work with the family and do things and spend as much time, and finally they begin to accept him or her as a family member, and they finally get to move in, and that was a native style adoption. No paperwork. So I had those two types in my family. I had a legally state signed papers adoption for my younger brother. My oldest brother was a native style adoption, but he was still my brother. They used to say, "Did you see your brother, Oscar?" Say, "Yeah, saw him." So they always referred to him as my brother, and that's what I knew. And he used to come to the house and say, "Is mom and dad home?" So, he used the same terminology we did. And so those two things are adoptions. Uh, one is brought up as a brand new baby in a family that is adopted to. So the other one is the child chooses the family he wants to live with, or she. So then the naming ceremony is different than the adoption. You can be adopted. I think the adoption is more common today because of marrying out of your tribe. to, like in my case, I married a man from Seattle, and he was adopted into my father's clan, a branch of my father's clan. And he came to Huna with me, and he was so charming. Everybody knew him, and he was real friendly and charming, and so they accepted him right away, gave him a name. They gave him a name. That was the adoption. That did not necessarily take a tribal uh, agreement. And I'm sorry today that the young men and the young women, if they marry like that, and they expect the opposite clan to step forward and adopt, but it's really not done uh, without involving a clan member, and it doesn't take say I want my wife to be a Kagwantan, but Kagwantan doesn't speak up, so the Kagwantan clan members were not even notified or asked, and some people are making it really complicated, like you have to go to the whole clan. That's not true. It's a family thing. In order uh, to help the children that comes from this new family, if the mother or the father can be adopted into a clan, and then when my husband was named, it wasn't public. It didn't have to be announced to the at a party or anything like that. So it when somebody asks me about it, I just tell them just go to the opposite clan uh, and talk to some people, and what something that happens too is the clan members will say, well, I don't want my mother's name to be given, or my sister's name. And in that case, then you should just make one up. Throughout the ages, the Clinkets had to make up names. It's not new. So if you receive a name because your family was careful to keep it, uh, then you're blessed. But sometimes it may be that they were able to say you're a Kagwantan, but you don't have a name. So a name could be made up and given. And the usual procedure for giving names is the same as the English. When a baby is born, well, his name's going to be John, or her name will be Jenny, or something like that. And so it's the same thing happens with the Tlingit names. The Tlingit names were given right away to the baby. No ceremony, no party, no nothing. They're just introduced by that name. So in order to get a second name. You already have a name from when you were born. If they wanted to honor you and give you a second name in honor of something, some event that happened, um, it could be done, but that's when it is publicly done, so that it can so that the members could realize that this person is given this name, and so they go through the ceremony as a child or an adult to be given a name with the ceremony. So that's what I was thinking we could do uh, this week. And it's not usual for the guests to do a naming ceremony. And maybe I just wasn't aware, but we'll just go ahead and do that. And we also have another person, and I think so. Corey, was that you that needed a name?
No, not me.
Who
I
was
have a name.
somebody else who needed a name?
It's Carrie.
Carrie.
Yeah.
Oh, what clan are you?
Uh, my my father's Ductington. My mother's African American. And my grandfather was Kagwantan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're let's see. Your Dr. Intan father, and you had a Kagwantan. So that would be, let me go backwards here. That goes,
My mother claims she was adopted, but she
yeah,
doesn't have a name. She doesn't remember any of the actual detail.
go,
Yeah.
okay. So the grandmother was Kagwantan, or grandparent was Kagwantan.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're right. You're right. Kagwantan would be the clan.
Yeah. I actually found the person who's carrying my grandfather's name, and I asked them. But they're in another clan now, so uh, I'm not sure how he got that Kagwantan name, but yeah.
Is that the name you want to use, or is that the name you got
Um.
permission to use?
Well, he's using it, so I don't want to do that. My aunties called me nicknames that were pretty embarrassing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe one of those I'd be okay with. It probably sounds better in Tlingit because they've always told it to me in English. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know my oldest son received a name, and his nickname is supposed to be Kashan. And I grew up with two guys that were named Kashan. So in his case, it's a nickname, and he wouldn't let us use it. So it's sometimes a nickname comes because that was a teasing name uh, for that person, can be passed down. So if you're Kagwantan and you need a name, do you have a name, an idea of a name that you
I
want
have,
to use?
yeah, I have idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that case, then what it will take is an announcement that it's not a naming ceremony, but it's an announcement. Unless you just want to go ahead and go through the naming ceremony.
Yeah, I'd like to go through the naming ceremony too, though.
Yeah, okay. So we'll have two Caguantans. And this is something that I wanted to make sure you knew. I never saw a guest doing a naming ceremony. It was always done by the hosts. It will take a host, a raven, to do the naming. Takes the opposite clan, in other words, to get your name. So, yeah, I think it will work. We can do that. Two names, and we can make one up or choose something that you like. I've had students that got nicknames in a class, and one guy said, I like hats. I have a lot of hats. So we name him Lots of Hats in Tlingit. And somebody else, I only like to be named after the volleyball game, or I really like skiing or something like that, or music, or, you know. So they had a lot of fun picking out their, making up their name. The one that really struck me was, we had this really super tall student, and he wanted his name in Tlingit to be tall, and it really kind of blew me away because by that time I couldn't see too well anyway. But I was told that he was very tall and very thin. So we called him the big one, but then in my mind that didn't gel because he was so thin. So finally worked on it, and finally came up with uh, thin as as thin as a pencil or thin as a stick or something like that. So we came up with a different name for him, and he was happy. So the names that you will get in class during a naming ceremony, you could hold it as a real ceremony, or it involves money. So the this is the reason that I like to talk about it, because I got a call from somebody had a newborn baby and they wanted to name him. But using the naming ceremony, I said, well, for a newborn baby, you don't have to. We want to. I said, all my family wants to. And so I said, well, whatever you do, don't let the money touch your face, because the money is so dirty, because you have to have money. And you take like a $20 bill and you swipe it across the forehead and say the name. Everybody say the person that does the money says the name, and the audience has to repeat it. Then that the money is given to somebody in the opposite clan. So then they take another bill and do the same thing. You have to do it 4 times to make them naming ceremony. So am I running out of time, Corey?
We got about 10 minutes left.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to make sure that you know the difference between adoption and the naming ceremony. So we have to call it the right thing. it's what we're going to do in this party is to is to call it a naming ceremony. So I've done it where there was 3 people that had to be named. So you complete it 4 times 1 person to get that, and then you go to the next person and announce a name. So that is important to recognize, and I think it's really a great thing. So we can talk about what kind of a name you think you should have, either that or you could be could everybody could pick a name for you. So I had one boy said, Cricket boy. He said, I want to be called Porcupine. Porcupine. So we gave him the gave him the name. And I found out the reason was when he was a baby, his hair stood up, straight up. And his grandma used to call him, there's my little porcupine.
Cute.
Yeah, it made him feel good. So that was a good name for him. So things like that happen.
Shaksani Key, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if someone was to be adopted into a clan, is there any ceremony with that? Or do you just talk to some members of the clan and if they accept, then you're a member and then you have a naming, or how does that work?
The person that wants like I was talking to somebody that married. I think the first thing you should think of if you marry a non-native is to introduce them to your clan, and it's something that the clan members handle, like the chiefs of your clan, and they could tell you at that time, well, we'll accept that person to be in our clan, but we want to hold on to our traditional names. So just make something new. And for the children, you could do the same. Make up names. And that should be done right away if you it used to be the tradition of marriage was such a confusing one because it was political, is that they were a little bit unsure what to do. And I had one person that insists that the clan of his choice had to get together and adopt them. He's supposed to ask, say, this is my wife, or we'll say it's a guy that married a non-native. This is my wife. Introduce them right away, and then hope that she's charming enough to charm everybody, and say, okay, then after they get to know her, and say, I'd like to have her adopted into to your clan and give her a name. And so you go from there. Don't wait too long after you marry into because then the newer Clinkets have the tendency to make up rules without checking with the old people to find out how things were done. So
Kunashish, yeah, our clan is trying to research some of this stuff now and to try to learn the proper way. What are some of the roles of adoptees within their new clan?
well, it was important to for the mother, as you know, the children are the mother's clan, or in some cases, if the mother, like me, I didn't have any problems because my mother gave names to my kids, but my husband had to be given a name by his clan, chosen clan. So it it seems to be the rule today to make sure that you let your clan know, and that you expect for your spouse to be accepted. And if they seem to accept it, but kind of stay away from the subject of giving a name, then you should ask and say, if we make up a name for him or her, would you accept it as a clan member? And so it's not a big party ceremony or anything like that, because it's a new type of adoption that is done. And to save, for the sake of the children, the Tlingit member of this particular couple should make sure, it's not a mistake to, the real mistake is to ignore it and hope that somebody will speak up and say, okay, we'll adopt them. It doesn't happen that easy. You could ask some clan members, and they could say, well, I can't make the decision, but I can ask the leaders to see what they think and get back to you. And so if the mother gets adopted into a clan, then the children will have a chance to be in a clan too. And then you could just pick names for them. And that's how it's done anyway with families. Like I said, because I'm Tlingit, my mother gave names to my kids. But you can, if your mother's not Tlingit, they shouldn't be ignored because of the children. That's really urgent and important to take care of that, because the children need to know that they're part of a family, part of a group, as they grow up.
Shirley, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's just past 1 o'clock. I just want to let you know.
My goodness. Yeah. We were supposed to pick the Nakani So on Thursday, we'll have to, that has to be done. So I hope we didn't go overboard on some of these subjects, but I felt like it was really important for everybody to be in on how it's the difference between adoption and naming. Kunakshish.
Sheesh, that was so valuable. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna
Goodness.
cheese.